Well, hey, folks, welcome to the pre-show. I know that's not an original line, as I say it almost every night, but that's what this is for the next 4 minutes and 25 seconds. Just the pre-show, just to make sure all our dials are dialed up and our buttons are pushed and our programs are on right and the stream is flowing. Hey, Uncle Dave, good to see you. Hey, Andrea, nice to see you as well. Matthew Sainsbury, good to see you. And David Otness. People starting to file in. I've got everything set up already, which is kind of interesting that I got nothing to do for 4 minutes and 25 seconds other than just talk. Grumpy Stack, how you doing, brother? Good to see you. And I'm tired. I'm tired in general. I think it's the COVID thing, the hangover from the COVID. It's, what would it be? Was it 2 weeks ago? Or it would have been 3 weeks ago today that I found out I had it. Would have been 2 weeks ago, a little more than 2 weeks ago, that I found out I wasn't contagious anymore and didn't have it. And it's just been, I've been fine. The stuffiness is all gone. I got a little bit of that dry, hacky cough left. It's a weird cough. And I feel it. I feel it in my chest. It's different. But it's not grinding anymore. But man, am I worn out. I'm just fatigued by it. So that's probably just one of the downsides of having it, I suppose. So there you go. That's just a little update on that. And just me being honest. I'm tired tonight. My brain's tired tonight. Rainy's tired tonight, but she never got the COVID. So not this time anyway. I like talking about Pompeii as well. I'm trying to hit it from a little different angle tonight. I've got a bunch of pictures that I'm going to show. I think I've got at least 20 slides in here that we might go through. We're not going to examine the slides so much as we're just going to talk about certain things and show these slides as we roll by. Hey, Matt Finn, Master Finn, good to see you. And Romeldian, good to see you as well. June Shasta, everybody filing in, good to see you. Glad that you're here tonight. Glad that you enjoy being here so much that you just show up. Nobody makes you. Okay, we got about a minute and a half before we go live on the radio station. So, and that's all it is, as you all know. It is the radio station, is officially what Odyssey Radio is. So, no video over on the station. So I'm good. How are you all? Are you all good? How's business? How's things? How's junk? We got less than a minute for you to answer that. So, what else we got? Who's talking in the chat room? Everybody's kind of talkative tonight. That's kind of nice. Good to see everybody yapping it up. All right. Got about 30 seconds or less, and we are going live. So all he is. $308, $309, $409. Okay, here we go. All right, everybody, we're going to go dark, and we'll be right back after we get started. Stand by.
Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with two T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Are there some of those places that you look at that are historical places? Some of them you've heard a lot about, some of them you haven't heard much about. Have you ever been to some of those places and you can feel the palpable energy in the air? Energy makes it sound like it's a positive thing, electricity and so on. But have you been places where the energy there feels like I either shouldn't be here, or by being here, I need to be more solemn? I haven't been to some of the places I want to see that I haven't seen. Are places like, when I think of that, I think of Auschwitz. I would like to visit Auschwitz. People say, why would you want to go there? Because of what happened there. Because it has a draw to me, an historical draw. But like so many people who've been there, I have heard that it's a very saddening experience. I have to ask, Rainey, weren't you at one of the concentration camps when you were over there? Long time ago. Which one? Do you remember? Was it like Treblinka? Where were you? Poland or Germany or Austria or where? Auschwitz. You were at Auschwitz, you think? That would be, Auschwitz was in Poland, right? Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but she was at one of them back in high school when she went out with the German club in high school. Oh, marching band. I got it all wrong. Dun, 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 she says, marching band. And so now I know Sarah Yusuf, she's in here tonight. Yep, she told me a while back that she had been to Pompeii, which is a place I have not been, but a place that I would love to see. I want to take Rainey and go to Pompeii. I want to go to Italy. I want to go see some things. And Pompeii would be one of those places. And Auschwitz is in Poland, yeah. Matthew, thank you. Dachau she went to. All right. She was at Dachau. I knew Auschwitz was in Poland.
Yeah, I don't remember all that stuff. I've had 3 kids. My brain's been sucked out both my nipples for the last however many years.
I don't know if you heard that. Rainey says, I have 3 kids. My brains have been sucked out through my nipples for the last 13 years. So there you go. So that keeps her happy and at home. So Pompeii is a place I'd like to go. I'd like to see it, and I've got a few pictures I'm going to share with you tonight. By the way, I'm Scotty Roberts. This is the Intrepid radio program you're listening to. I'm the host of it. It's my show. And you can listen over at Odyssey Radio, ODYSY radio.com. Or you can go over to one of four places, three of them on Facebook, one of them on my YouTube page, and watch the video simulcast of this show. So, and when you're at, by the way, the YouTube channel, you can join the chat room where there are people that are talking to me right now over there. And you can come and join the family over in the chat room and join the conversation. And while you're here, if you're not subscribed to my YouTube, subscribe, please. Give it a thumbs up for the show. And also join the channel if you'd like to. And hit the little join button, and it'll show you 3 ways you can join. And all of those of you who are members already, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And so we're going to take a little look at Pompeii tonight. Only because I wanted to do something more historical or psychological tonight. To get back this week, I've been trying to follow suit with that a bit. We talked about turning older. We talked about, I don't know what else we talked about this week. You all know. It's all there. So in the archives. And tonight I thought, I came across just an article that flashed up in front of me about 15 weird things we don't know about Pompeii. And I looked at the article, and it's like, it's not all that weird. It's just the way they attract attention to the article. But, and it wasn't one of those clickbait articles where you got to click to each one of the 15 things as different links. It was an article. And I might get into that a little bit if we have time toward the end. But I wanted to show you some pictures of Pompeii. And I wanted to show you, talk about, I put in the intro for this show something about wanting to look at the ghosts and the curses of places like Pompeii. Now, I don't necessarily mean in a paranormal sense, although I'm sure there's plenty of that. I would love to go walk the streets of Pompeii with a spirit box and with meters and with things like that and do a little investigating. Of course, there's a part of you, like I talked about, I would never do that at Auschwitz because I think that's too, in a sense, it's a sacred place. It's a solemn place, and I wouldn't want to besmirch it with that. Is Pompeii the same thing? Because did you know that so far they found about 2,000 corpses in Pompeii, and about 1,500 of them they were able to do the castings and extract them, but about another 500 they haven't been able to, and they don't even have.
If they found holes to what they thought were
Yeah.
bodies, they would fill them. I thought that was really cool.
That was crazy. Rainey was talking about that, where they'd fill the holes. They'd find holes with bones in them, cavities in the ash. And then somebody figured out, and many of you already know this, they figured out, hey, maybe we should pour some plaster in there. And they would, and then it would harden.
Here's my dad's radio.
Okay.
Here's my TikTok phone.
Thank you, Ellie. You're interrupting. Thank you very much. Not okay. All right. So, where was I? They'd fill the holes with plaster, and of course they would remove the ash, and they would find the shapes of the bodies of the people who died there in that in the ash, and how they all died instantaneously from the pyroclastic flow, or the gases that came over first, and it boiled the blood instantaneously. And most of them probably died not even knowing what they were dying from, just instantaneous. And the organic material rotted. Exactly, Sarah. And yeah, she's sweet, Dave Potter. She just got yelled at from Rainey too, because she does that during the show. Not supposed to be doing that. Anyway, you get it. Sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's just, here we go again. So I think we've had plenty of familial disruptions this week, including last night. We weren't here at all. And by the way, if you didn't see the post, her nose is fine. She got bashed in the face with a basketball, and her one eye started to bruise already, and her nose, and she was crying for quite a bit. And so we thought, oh, she broke her nose. So it turns out the nose is not broken. It is sore, and she's got a little bruising under the eye, and that's about it. That's all the further that went. So that's a good thing. Yeah, like Marsha Brady. Marsha. Exactly. So anyway, and all the stuff that they were finding in Pompeii, Pompeii right now it's a snapshot of a city that died in an instant. Because everything was there, everything was in place. People were all over the streets and in buildings. People were doing things. There was stacks of baked bread to be sold at the little shops. There were restaurants on the corner that were serving food. And so all of that is there. It was a day that is recorded forever in history. And they're still finding out more. And there's still, according to what I heard, there's more than 2/3 of the city that has not been excavated at all. And they're slowly but surely doing it. And of course, there's the fear that Vesuvius could erupt again. So you're doing all this, we're learning things, and we're taking advantage of it while it's there, but it may not be there forever. There may be something else. And they've got all kinds of safety stuff in place now to evacuate if anything starts looking like it. I'm going to throw up a couple of pictures here as I talk, just because I want you to see some of these. Now, I have not been there. These are not my photos. They're stock photos. And but I think they're very interesting to see. I'm going to start with this. These are some of the streets as you're looking at Pompeii. And by the way, I wanted to show, I may share my screen with you on this one, because I wanted to show you, and I was going to take some screenshots, and I did not, but the Google Earth shots of Pompeii. Now, if you don't have Google Earth, it's a fun tool. I'm going to do this before we get into too much more. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see this. Share screen. Boom, boom. And if you're, of course, on the radio and just the audio, you're going to miss some of this. Here we go. Google Earth. There we are. Now, if I want to go to, I'm going to go find, let's launch Earth. And let's go find Pompeii. I was looking at this a little earlier this afternoon. So I hope you're seeing that. Yeah, you are. Okay. Here we go. Google Earth. And I'm right there on Pompeii. Look at that. Okay. Let's do this. Let's back this out. And I want to go true north, which is like that. And there's Italy, of course. There's the boot of Italy, as you can see. There's Naples, which is about 9 miles away from Pompeii. And let's zoom into Pompeii here. There's Mount Vesuvius that you can see. You see it right over here, the volcano. I wish I could get rid of some of these markings on here, so we can just do this without that. But down here, here's the city of Pompeii. Here's Naples is over here. The Bay of Naples, I think, is where Pliny the Elder, or the Younger, I don't remember which one, saw the eruption from there. So if you go down into Pompeii, we can start going over to the historical section, which is here. And you can tell because the old amphitheater is there. You can see here, there's the old amphitheater. And I think that's, so far, it's in about the southeast corner. But all of this, as you start moving this way, is all the ruins of old Pompeii. And you can see the houses. Here, let's back out just a little bit. And you can see the grid work of the streets. This is all the ruins of Pompeii. Right there. And there's all of this section over here, the grassy sections you start to see that are not excavated. And they're more, I heard less than a year ago that there is over 2/3 of the city that's still not even excavated. Here's some more of the, this is not an amphitheater. It was a track of some kind, ancient. And there's another one up here. Let's see where I can get to it right there. So this gives you an idea of what the city looks like by aerial shots as of today. These satellite shots over on Google Earth. So let's get back to the archaeological site. And it's all right in here. Looking for the, sorry if I'm making your head spin. I got to zoom back out to see what I'm doing. There it is. Okay. So you can see all of this. And walking down the roads here, there's Vesuvius Vesuvius right at the top center. Pompeii down here with this pin. And here's your historical site. Down in here. Right there. Nope, that's current residential. It's easy to get lost in here. Okay, right here. Trying to make sure I can find this all. There it is, because there's the, again, scintillating radio, I realize, but if you're watching, this is very interesting stuff. So when you see all these shots of people walking down, you can see the lanes here. These are all the old lanes, the Roman roads you can see going through town in Pompeii. Go down the side streets where they have all the shops and the brothels and the homes. There you can see. So there you go. That's what we're looking at when we're looking at these shots of, I think I've got a shot of this spot right here, looking out toward the northwest. So there you go. You get the idea. There's Pompeii today. That's all they've uncovered to date. So if I go back over here, let's go back to the show and stop sharing the screen. For as interesting as that is, here you go. Here is one of the streets. I think the street we were just looking at was this one right here. You saw some of these structures looking down the avenue. Like so. These are, what's amazing to me is you look at this and you are seeing the streets that people would have walked on or that we're walking on. This is the way the city looked back on the day it died, and everybody with it. So in talking about being haunted by the past, I called up a couple of stories that people had written, haunted by the past, Pompeii's curse, and the supernatural, and haunted in the sense that I think they're not as much talking about the supernatural, although they hint at it. And in 79 AD, as we all know, ash rained down on Pompeii, burying the city. And Pliny the Younger describes the catastrophe as white ash billowing miles into the air, hordes of country people unsure whether to leave their homes and run for the seas, and smoke casting a black shade over the sky. And during the tragedy, Pliny recalled the existential despair that the people of Pompeii felt. He wrote this: "Some were lifting their hands to the gods, but the greater part convinced that they were now no gods at all, and that the final endless night of which we have heard had come upon the world." This is what they felt, according to Pliny the Younger. Here, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius is a supernatural event in the sense that it belongs to the control of the gods. and it's devoid of scientific explanation, at least to the people that lived in that day. And though we can explain away the supernatural effects of volcanoes, Pompeii nonetheless appears mystic in the eyes of a lot of people who visit that site today. In 2020, a Canadian tourist named Nicole wrote an apologetic confession to the city of Pompeii. When she was in her 20s, she stole 2 mosaic tiles from the city, 2 pieces of amphora vase, and a piece of ceramic wall. And since then, she'd experienced numerous unexplained tragedies, including breast cancer twice and the undergoing financial hardship. And she believed she was suffering at the hands of a curse. In her letter, she wrote, "I took a piece of history captured in time with so much negative energy attached to it. People died in such a horrible way, and I took tiles related to that kind of destruction." Now, Nicole's story, although tragic, invokes this conception of karma within anybody who thinks about this story. We know the act of stealing scientifically could not bankrupt us. Scientifically, it can't cause breast cancer unless you're, I don't know, stealing radioactive materials and holding them to your chest while you're running. Who knows? Yet part of us think that there are some supernatural consequences to actions, cause and effect to coincidence. And we stop to entertain whether it's possible. And this exercise is defining the supernatural a la a curse from the natural isn't really new. The Greeks and the Romans demarcate the supernatural as beyond any possible explanation, meaning if you've exhausted everything else, this is probably what you're left with. If you have no scientific or educated appraisal of something, this is why you're left with that. If a physician couldn't take care of a wild stab at an explanation, it was supernatural. So, supernatural is a concept that we think to be static throughout society. Acts of gods, ghosts that exist outside the realm of natural sciences. And to us, the concept of nature seems intrinsic. Given a concept like physics or biology, one can easily classify all these things as natural sciences, dealing with concepts that have clear causes and effects. However, this concept of natural was invented by us, by people. We coined that. This is natural. And we all know that when we speak of hauntings and curses, and perhaps, I like I mentioned, going to a place like Auschwitz and seeing that there ghosts there, most probably. Is it cursed ground? No, I don't think so, but I think you can carry elements of things with you in a supernatural sense. If you take something from somewhere, they say even in the paranormal, you could find, something like, I don't know, I'm just going to pick something up here, an old mortar and pestle. You could find a piece like that at a garage sale and take it home. It could carry spirits with it. So we've been told. So we've wondered at times, even in our own household, in our own family, if we've brought things in by bringing objects in. And so there's always that question. G.E.R. Lloyd, in The Intervention of Nature, argues that Hippocratic writers started to create a domain of nature as opposed to identifying a single thing as natural, like a plant, by dismissing the idea that disease and diseases are indications of God's wrath. I mean, we heard that even in my lifetime. Back in the 80s, I was an art director at a little shop in Lynchburg, Virginia, and our biggest client was the Moral Majority, Jerry Falwell's Moral Majority. Did a lot of work for them. And I remember at that time in 83, 84, was when AIDS came on the scene. And what was the definition of AIDS back then? Or not the definition. What was the explanation for AIDS in many circles? Well, it's God's judgment on homosexuality, is what we were told in those Christian right circles. And now I'm going to tell you, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's the way God works. That's my personal take on it. Maybe some of you would agree, maybe some of you would disagree. But isn't this the way that we have explained some things that we can't explain? Oh, it's something that God brought on to punish us, to punish America. Why did that baby die? Because the parents had done something they shouldn't have done. Those kinds of explanations are the things that we hear. And I think it's pretty bad that we would even that's a lame way to describe that. I think that is a nonsensical way to describe what happens. I don't think God is a God that wreaks judgment on the planet, especially if you are a Christian and you believe in New Testament theology of the work of Christ, the redemptive work of Christ, what that's all about in its ins and outs. It's not the same thing as God doesn't wreak judgment on the earth anymore that way, because it's supposed to be filtered through his son. That's what theology says. Christian theology will tell you that. So Hippocrates claimed that epilepsy is a completely natural disease, he said. It's free of the gods' interventions. He dismissed the idea that diseases are indications of God's wrath. For the unqualified doctor, a God's wrath proves this handy diagnosis to have. Oh, well, I can't quite figure that out, but I'll bet you it's a small toad or a dwarf living in your stomach, or it's a demon, or it's God's judgment. And so the Roman Empire did have a legal framework for sanctions against bad doctors. There wasn't a standardized credential system. Interestingly enough, the most prominent Roman physician, Galen, believed epilepsy to be caused by the moon. And this medical environment, every physician is for themselves, and they can only distinguish themselves by their explanatory power. It was the moon that made him fall onto the floor in spasms and grand mal seizures. So most of the explanations of diseases were bluffs, according to Lloyd. They relied on a definition of nature that justified their explanations and inquiries, while demonizing their rivals' claims. In Book 2 of the Republic by Plato, he describes how curses became the currency of injustice in Greece. Listen to this. Plato said, "Consider further, Socrates, another kind of language about justice and injustice employed by both laymen and poets. If a man wishes to harm an enemy at slight cost, he will be enabled to injure, just and unjust alike, since they, priests and soothsayers, are masters of spells and enchantments that constrain the gods to serve their end. And for all these sayings, they cite the poets as witnesses with regard to the ease and plentifulness of vice, quoting, 'Evil doing in plenty a man shall find for seeking.'" End of quote. Now, Plato himself broke from his contemporaries to express that curses were harmful to society. And after Plato's death, his writings on the matter and laws were used to justify the persecution of witches. More generally, Plato used words relating to curses and magic to refer to all negative things. For example, as historian Elizabeth Balfour noted, the sophist is referred to as a deceitful magician. So in the case of Pompeii's robbers, their desperate act of returning the stolen mosaics, which when their explanatory power was depleted, In her letter as a last resort, Nicole begs, "We are good people, and I don't want to pass this curse on to my family, my children, or myself anymore. Please forgive my careless act that I did years ago." So she believed that she brought a curse on herself and her family. Not at first, but it was after a course of events. And she felt that she brought all those things on herself because she had stolen artifacts from Pompeii. Now, I'm looking at an article that was written by somebody else on this. He was talking about wandering through the ruins of Pompeii. And he said, October notwithstanding, it was hot, sunny day, even first thing in the morning. When our tour group arrived, in the distance, the green slopes of Mount Vesuvius rose against the sky, lush, serene, and breaking absolutely no resemblance to the flaming monster that destroyed the city and several others in 79 AD. Of course, there was Herculaneum, which we easily overlook while we're talking about Pompeii. It's a singularly eerie place, he writes. And by the way, the author of this is, I don't know, doesn't say. Oh, L.E. Carmichael. And he says it's a singularly eerie place when you go to Pompeii. At that time of day, the ruins were all but abandoned. Just a few hundred tourists scattered across what was once a bustling metropolis. There were too few people in too much space, and there were scars of utter devastation right next to buildings that were perfectly preserved, as if waiting through the long centuries for their inhabitants to return. By the way, I've got another picture here I'll add. This picture is a street corner restaurant. You can see there the bar that you could sidle up to. And all those holes in the countertop were for the pots of food that they were making. This was your equivalent of a fast food joint on the corner in Pompeii. And all those paintings are original. There's paintings of gladiators and animals on the wall. Behind this is a fresco of gladiators. You know, it could have been like our sports bars, you know. I don't know, take your home team, Vikings burgers or something. You know, this could have been, you know, the gladiator fair, gladiator food, gladiator grub. There you go. And you could stop here and get some fast food on your way home, on your way to work, taking lunch break, whatever it was. So you wonder that some people considered Pompeii to be cursed. In fact, more than 100 tourists who'd once made off with tiles, stones, or other pilfered relics have since mailed them back, like this story I just told you about, blaming the stolen objects for all that's since gone wrong in their lives. Some of those unfortunate tourists were Canadians, some were Americans, some were European. And in case you're wondering, this author says, I'm not among those cursed visitors. He said, I was sufficiently haunted by the experience of being herded past the remains of one of Pompeii's victims, with enough time to snap a photograph, but not enough time to pause for a moment in respect. Italian tour guides are militant about their schedules, and I felt rather ghoulish as a result of this unseemly haste. No way would I compound the insult by making off with a sketchy souvenir. And I've got some pictures of some of those bodies that I still have to upload some of these. I could only upload 10 of these at a time, sad to say. So I have another 10 pictures that aren't even in my retinue here. I'll show you some pictures of some of those bodies here. This is, by the way, recently uncovered slave quarters. You see on the left, you see a bed. You see a bed in the back. You see the table off to the right, and the bowls and the pots and so on. And it wasn't probably this dirty at the time. It's dirty because it was covered in ash. But what you're seeing here is something recently uncovered, the slave quarters of some of the people that lived there. And this guy that's writing this story, he talks about he wasn't haunted by anything he took away from the site other than his memory of seeing these places and the haunted or cursed feeling of actually seeing these things, of seeing what happened to these people. And let me grab a couple of pictures of some of the people he's talking about. I'm going to throw this one up and a couple of more. So I'll try to talk my way through this as I'm going. If you look at this picture, this gives you an idea. This is a boy, they say, that was found. I think this is the one that was found in the bread ovens. He was hiding in the ovens. And you can look at the gesture where he's got his hands up to his face. Is he covering his face because of the hot blast and he's catching the hot blast and this was the last gesture he ever made? Or was he sitting there because he was suffocating? He couldn't breathe because of the ash piling up. That's a good question. I've got a few more of these, and it only lets me upload these into the show about one at a time. So I've got this one that was a very disconcerting looking picture when I first saw this, and you can see what you think of this as well. Open that one. Here we go. This one. This is the picture of the two men. I don't know what they're in. I don't know if they're in a bath house there. There's a bench in the background, but the two, they look like they're naked. You see their genitals and all that because the clothes all melted away. And but these are the two bodies. They found these two. They don't know if they were friends, if they knew each other, or if they are, or if they were strangers that ended up in the same place, ducking for cover. Then you've got this one. This one shows you didn't get a lot of detailed facial features because the skin would have melted away and decayed, but you got some. You take a look at that. Now that is, and if you ask me, that's a very interesting picture because it shows a little bit more of, you see facial features there, even though you can't make out the particular features of a particular person. Oh, that guy looks like my uncle. You can't say that. But these are the kinds of ghosts that remain, I think, that we can see. And I think this author of this article was haunted by this stuff more than anything, because he could see these things. And he took that with him. I've got a couple of more of the people, and while it's a little depressing, a little bit, I think it's fascinating from an archaeological standpoint, a scientific standpoint, but at the same time, it can be a little depressing when you're thinking these were real people that were walking these streets. And I've got a few more here to show you. You've got this fellow right here, laying at the bottom of a stairway. And his features of his body look very rounded. Is it because I don't think the body had time to bloat or anything like that? I just think this is what you got left with in those cavities that were made because of the very rapid hardening of the ash around them. And I'm going to throw one more into my my wings here, and I want to go back to this guy's article and tell you a little bit more about what he had to say. So you've got this fellow here, just laying at the bottom of stairs next to a mosaic floor. This is somebody who dropped where he was. And this guy in this article, he says, it was the memory, perhaps, of that huddled body that made recent discoveries so fascinating to me. Or maybe not. Let's be honest, this science is so weird, so cool, though, dare I say it, mad, that I probably would have found it fascinating no matter what, because Italian researchers have discovered a Vesuvius victim in nearby Herculaneum whose brain had turned to glass, literally turned to glass. We didn't know the human body could do that. And they think it did that because it liquidated his brain, the hot gases, and immediately the cooling of it turned it to glass. So the working theory is that the poor fellow's skull was flash heated by the volcanic blast, liquefying his brain tissues, which crystallized as they cooled, and that is not a thing that we know human bodies to do. But it increased, for me, this author says, the oh wow factor. Follow-up research using electron microscopy has revealed that the structure of some of the man's neurons, some of his actual brain cells, was preserved during the process. So you can look that up, by the way. The guy whose brain was turned to glass in Herculaneum. Imagine if the man's last thoughts were also preserved in these fragile cells. Imagine that. Would he have cursed the same gods? Were there echoes of what must have been a terrifying, if blessedly brief, final moment? You got to think, for as horrid a way to die as this is, it happened in seconds. You were gone. It was not long. Would he have cursed the gods? The light-fingered tourists to Pompeii believe have cursed them? There's little wonder that the streets of the city feel less empty than echoing, he says, echoing with the voices of Vesuvian ghosts. So there is that. There's this man. Look how serene he looks. Was he serene? Was he sleeping when it happened? And it just killed him that instantly? He never woke, never moved? Or did he fall in this position and suffocated to death this way? They say people can go into the fetal position when they suffocate. And so apparently not everybody was killed by the, there were people who suffocated by the ash that was coming down. Then it was the pyroclastic flow that killed everybody remaining. So this went on for hours, by the way. Here's one more. This is some of the groupings of people that they found, which I think is, again, where it's got that, like this author said, it's got that oh wow factor because it's really interesting to see this stuff. But at the same time, it's got that quality of this happened to real people. These are real people who died here. So are these the ghosts of this? Now, by the way, in case any of you were thinking that perhaps I was going to deliver an academic expose on Pompeii, not tonight. I wanted to touch on this idea that perhaps there is this what is the word I'm looking for? There is this mystique about what happened there, the haunting of what happened there, the curse of what happened there. And so I know very few people personally who've been to Pompeii. I know a couple of people. And I'm finding that, again, I can only bring up the comparison to like Auschwitz because it's a place of, Pompeii is different in that it was instantaneous death of a city and a people. And everything that happened that day is still there. That did not burn up, of course. So the question you ask is, what is there that might still be and a haunting element that you take with you. There's another thing that I looked at here, and it was the frescoes. Um, I was really taken by the detail of the frescoes that you see. When you think ancient times, Pompeii in 79 AD, it's basically 2,000 years ago, give or take a couple of decades. And um, Dave Potter can maybe have some affinity with me on this as we paint murals together. And the things that we paint on walls, we think we have such modern techniques. We've got brushes and paints. We've got a million colors we can choose from. We don't have to mix everything out of, we don't have to buy powders and mix them with water. We have all kinds of paints that we can pre-buy. And this is how we do our murals. And we do very detailed work. And you don't think of the work, you look at the work of artists of 2,000 years ago, and you can see in sculpture, they were gloriously perfection. But you don't think of painting being that way. And so the paintings, when you start looking at these frescoes, you start getting things that you're starting to see things like this. And sorry, I've got a child crying in the background. There is no privacy here on this show, as you know. So my child cries, at least mom's there. So don't know what's going on. So you might hear that in the background. Hey, Ellie, can you shut that door, please? She's with mom. Oh, is she? It's hurt pretty bad again, says mom. Meaning temporary pain. I'm not going to jump up from the show because mom's there. It's once again a child, the small child, the one that is injury prone because she is so bouncing all over the walls all the time. Apparently fell and hit her ribs. So she's fine. She just hurt herself. So in case any of you are wondering. So Lucky Smith says, I believe all the sculptures were painted. But curators removed the paint because they preferred the white. Yeah. In some places. I know in Egypt, a lot of the buildings that you see with all the inscriptions all over them are all brilliantly painted. So here you go. Here's one. This is an outdoor. Oh, well, this might be an indoor thing, but it's outdoor, revealed to the. They've got it re-enclosed here. But paintings like this, the bright colors on everything. And imagine what these things would have looked like when they were new. Look at this one. This is the wall of a villa where somebody lived. And you look at the paintings on the walls. This is the kind of stuff that we paint all the time when we do mural work. You can see the geometric patterns in the entryway there, or the archway from one room to the other. And then the big long mural on the wall. Now, this one's going to throw some of you. Ladies, hang on to your hats. That came out of a brothel. There's more to this picture, but that's the one I grabbed. You show them from head to toe. And of course, this long, what would measure to be maybe a 3-foot phallus hanging out of his drawers or his toga. And so this is, and you see all kinds of paintings like this. I could do a whole show just showing you fresco paintings of all the pornographic stuff, from cunnilingus to fellatio to sexual act and all of that. Oh, now I'm looking, we got about 2 minutes left before we're out of here. So I'll show you a couple more of these. We didn't even get to the 15 things. Look at this. I just think of the delicacy of this. Look at the knees and the legs. And it's a woman. She's holding a couple of geese or swans in her lap. And the delicate realism of this. This is almost Michelangelo in color and usage of light. It's just amazing pictures. And there's this, a couple painted on their house. I've seen worse portraits than that. And then this one, this is the final one I have here. I'm going to throw this up. This is a wall fresco in a house. You're seeing the floor level down at the bottom, and this would be the whole wall, and it's stretched for about 20 feet by about 10 or 12 feet tall. And on the details inside this painting, I've seen this from the red fruit over on the right, the yellow fruit, the different birds flying, things hiding in the flowers, the insects, the bugs, the birds, the plants, is all just meticulously detailed. So these are some of the things from Pompeii. Oh, you saved something of this just last night, Dave Potter said. It's an amazing, I saw a video of this, yes. It's pretty amazing. So we have come to the time, believe it or not, where we have to say good night to the radio audience. And so I want you all to stick around for the Captain's Cabin. Might be a short one. We'll see how we feel tonight. And I'm just worn out today. So we might not have a long one, but we'll have one. So stick around. And for all of you who are part of the radio audience, I got to say goodnight. Live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
Well, welcome to the Captain's Cabin. Glad you could all make it and glad you could all stay around. Seeing some comments, some leftover comments from the show. And we can keep talking about this. Sarah Yusuf said one of those frescoes was mimicking a garden. Yes, it was like painting an indoor garden. And I see we've already got Uncle Dave here. I don't know if he's driving or if he's home because I only see his icon rather than his face. So let's bring him into the stream. How you doing, Uncle Dave?
Howdy.
How's it going?
Good. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. Excellent.
Good.
That garden is a full room that they've that
Yes.
they've saved. I watched the video on it last night where they do a panning 360, and I saved it. I'm
I
trying to
probably
find
saw
that.
the same video. Yeah.
I'm trying to find that video so I could share it with you, so you could share it with the show, but I'm not having any luck. Isn't that the way it always is?
It
I know
always
I
is.
saved it
It
last
always
night.
is. Yeah. If
But
it's copyrighted,
it's
I
a
can't
full
share it.
crump low all the way around, like you're sitting in, and they've put like a bench in the center of the room so you can sit there and slowly turn yourself and just kind of
And you
view
have
this
to
garden.
imagine, how was that room decorated? Now I know there's decor that has survived, and they find it all over Pompeii. I don't know what else was
Furniture
in
and
that
stuff like
room.
that. It's amazing, the wooden furniture that has survived,
I
turned to
know.
carbon.
Yeah, it's just amazing. But what would be in that room, you wonder? Would they have had throw pillows all over the floors? Would they
I
have
kind
had
of envision it as a dining room. It's the perfect
maybe
sort of aesthetic for a dining room.
it was literally bringing the outdoors inside was what it was supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And,
And we get
so
asked to do that all the time.
we do. Trompe-l'oeil, you're trying to make the walls look like something real is there. And so yeah.
And when you look at it, you have a garden wall that cuts around a tree, and on each wall that tree is the center, so that it repeats itself all the way around.
Yes. And it's I wanted to load more pictures of that one, but you can see as it went already in the show, there wasn't enough time to show everything and make any kind of cogent presentation about it.
Pompeii and Herculaneum are amazing finds.
Yes. And there is some fear that mountain's going to blow up again.
I don't know if you saw in the chat, but I could just see God. Hey, I covered that up for a reason.
Yeah, really.
Just about the time we get it completed empty.
Yeah, exactly. I remember in my church-going seminary days, Bible school days, somebody was talking, I think it was the pastor, having talked about seeing Pompeii. And he said, and the way it was characterized, it was like, and you wouldn't believe, you would have to turn your eyes because it turns your stomach to see the pornographic paintings all over the walls, or no wonder God destroyed it. And I thought, wait. My stomach doesn't turn from pornographic pictures. Naked people don't bother me. Sex doesn't.
We're artists,
but we're artists.
And we see the body differently than
that
I think
thing
other people do.
In your mouth is art. It's my favorite line from The Iron Giant. The Iron Giant animated cartoon. The Iron Giant's in the guy's junkyard and he's eating his sculptures. He's making sculptures out of junk, and the giant's eating them. And he goes, put that down. That's art. And he goes, that thing in your mouth is art. And that became, if you remember Anita Kane, that was her favorite line with me. So that was.
I thought of you about 2 a.m. You just reminded me of that. Yes. I was scanning through my Facebook Market and came across a garage sale that was going to be happening, and one of the things they took a picture of was a large Iron Giant.
Oh, dude!
And it's a beautiful piece. It was a toy. It must have been 3 feet tall.
Oh man, I probably know which ones those are because there were like,
and I know you love that.
What were what the hell is the name of them? The Metatron and the Decepticons and the what were they called? The something bots. Why am I blanking on that? Because my Transformers. Jeez.
Yeah, but this was not a Transformer. This was the Iron Giant from the animated. Giant. Yeah,
I've got one around here. That was one of the first ones because that movie came out in like 2000.
Yeah.
And, and I have an Iron Giant that's got a little wire that comes from him. He's like an RC Iron Giant. And you can make him walk, and his chest opens up and fires a missile. So, anyway.
do a quick search and see if I can find it.
That's pretty cool. So, Autobots says Field Guy. Hey, Field Guy. Is that the first you were in here tonight? I haven't paid close attention to the chat room while I'm talking away and doing stuff, but I think that's it. Field Guy, it's good to see you. You're not around much anymore. You used to be a daily, constant, minute-to-minute fixture. Haven't seen much of you lately. Good to see you in the chat room. So, I was amazed, Dave, because I used to, and I got over this a long time ago, but I used to think that the ancients didn't paint the same way we paint now. That they obviously had a different grasp, or it was a different evolutionary paradigm for painting the human form. But then I thought, well, then how can they sculpt it so perfectly in ancient times? And then you look at the art on these frescoes, and it's like the stuff you and I paint. Hey, Sarah.
Yeah.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Uncle Dave.
So, what's on your mind, Sarah?
So, as I keep saying over in the chat room, I have been to Pompeii.
Yeah.
And even some of these pictures, they don't do justice, because when you're actually there, you can see the amount of level and detail. Like, for instance, that image you showed of the road in front of the, for most of the road.
Yes.
Picture of what the road was like.
Yes.
When you're actually there, you have like the big stones as shown in the picture, but in between they took the details of adding white stones and white crystals and putting them in the cracks, so people could see the reflection of the moon at night, so they know where the road was at night.
Really?
Yeah. So I mean, it's stuff
Wow.
like that.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's that level of attention to detail.
Well, and I was watching a documentary on that, and Pompeii had like one-way streets and all the kinds of things that we think of as modern traffic patterns. They had all of that back then.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And we saw various types of houses, like like somewhere prostitutes may reside, or a bigger house where for a rich person may have like 3-4 rooms. Consider, I mean, for a city, that's considered quite large because of the real estate. Where it's like in a brothel, like if you were a well-to-do prostitute, you might have like 2 rooms, like a front room and a bathroom and the bedroom. But
so, Sarah, can you see this picture?
Yeah,
it would be like these roadblocks, which we see now. You go to London and they have, little pylons, permanent pylons set in concrete.
Yeah, I don't remember the function.
So I thought that's what you were talking about. That's where they would put the crystals in?
No,
No.
on the bottom, and like along the street.
What they described those as, when on this thing that they were talking about the roadways and stuff.
Yeah.
Wagons can still roll over those because the wheels were rather large. So the wheels would go between those large stones. But when the streets were when it was raining and stuff like this, because they didn't have a gutter system, you could just walk across those stones to cross the street, so you didn't have to get your feet muddy or wet.
Oh, I see. So that's like a crosswalk.
Yeah.
Like
a crosswalk. Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a shame though, because even because of human culture, after when the Christians came and they saw try to wipe out most of what was considered the old culture, and like we were discussing earlier with the Priapus, god of fertility and male genitalia and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
there's a god for that?
Yeah. So there's a god for everything, apparently.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, a lot of stuff was either destroyed or like on a lot of statues, they actually broke those bits off and they tossed them out.
That's why you see them missing on so many statues.
Right.
Well, and in many statues that were brought to Europe, you have the fig leaf there. That fig leaf is something that was added in many cases afterwards The genitalia were knocked off. A fig leaf was carved
Yep.
and cemented in place. It's not something that the ancient Greeks and Romans did.
Right. But like most of those, loft off bits, they have been collected and placed into a museum, which the museum it says has
The
its
Museum of
own
Lopped Off
tumultuous
Penises.
history. I mean, yeah, they have its own turmoil where they're open, they're closed, you're allowing everybody to come. It's not.
But you notice
kids,
these same Christians, they didn't lop the breasts off of statues. They were totally fine with the nude women. Cool. These are just very self-conscious religious people.
I mean, it's like they applied their own methodologies post Garden of Eden.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it's a totally different culture, and when you go there, it's like you're stepping back in time. It's frozen in time, and it's when we went because we went with a tour and everything. It's very, you would think, oh, you're going on a tour, you're going, this, there, and everywhere, but it was very somber. The air had a somberness to it, and it just, it's like that saying that it always makes you think. You're here one day and then gone in the next. I mean, these people, a lot of people are frozen, frozen in time and had seconds to react.
Yeah.
Have to be gone in seconds. And like we were talking about, the flows and everything, it's like you're able to breathe in one moment, and then all of a sudden it's like your lungs are on fire.
Yeah.
And
what's
experiencing
happening? Why are my
heat
lungs on fire?
Yeah, and experiencing heat of more than 500 degrees. And if you think 500 degrees is broiling, on an oven, 500 degrees is broiling, and you're just going from just walking along, and all of a sudden you're gone. And the way that they've kind of preserved it and structured, sometimes they had to move the bodies for research and all that, but some of them they've actually kept in place, or kept the objects in place, because we saw the bakery, there was still bread in the oven. And for me, which was really sad, is they had dogs that were still chained up, lying dead, and slaves that were in similar states. So we saw
that was something,
a pregnant slave.
I may hit this topic again tomorrow, only because I've got some other information, but some of the interesting things that they found in Pompeii, and one of them was these rings or wristbands that they found, and they're very highly polished gold. They look like untarnished.
Mm-hmm.
And they were bracelets that a slave owner would buy for his slave, with whom he had sexual relations with or loved, to show how much he adored them and how much he could lavish upon them.
Right. I mean, it's showing off. I mean, it's showing off your ornament. I mean, slaves were considered objects.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So, I mean, a collar made out of gold is still a collar.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But a lot of the accounts, because that we know from Pompeii, we also received from Pliny the Younger, and those in archaeological circles, or people who study ancient history, know of Pliny the Elder, who was what we would call in this day actually crazy. So I mean, Pliny the Elder tried to go back to try and save people with by tying a pillow on his head to go save people. I mean, the intention was good, but the execution not so much. But
right.
Yeah, but I mean,
but it kept hard rocks from hitting him in the head. He was thinking.
Yeah,
there was that.
Yeah.
So.
And even if you think of medicine back in those days, they were using concepts of the four humors. It's not like a modern interpretation of medicine that we have now.
Right.
So I mean, that's a completely different system of medicine that eventually evolved away from that for the like Galen and Hippocratic stuff.
There is a lot of pictures from Pompeii that are, there's a lot of guys grabbing women's boobs. There's a lot of, or fondling them, however you want to say. There's a lot of pictures of intercourse.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of pictures of several people having intercourse, three-way, things like that. And I'm just looking. I just uploaded a couple of these that aren't too. I don't want to get too randy on the show, you know. I have to be careful still. But if I loaded up a couple of these, let's see. Let's take a look. Share.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in that, it's culture and society around that time going from, the lowliest person versus their gods. They were completely hedonistic. It was a hedonistic society. The gods had their moods and their appetites, Zeus especially. So, and then, what's as so beloved, so below,
right.
Institution.
Here's one.
Yeah.
So things like this, not too bad, but there were some where you see the phallus, you see the entry, you see the everything. So you had pictures like this, tons of this kind of stuff. You had, I only uploaded one more, lots of things like this, all over the walls in Pompeii, to varying degrees of. A lot of these look like they were done by the same artist. It's like, yes, hire Evictus, because Evictus can paint great nude scenes. And, but, he got his name painting nude scenes or something in Pompeii. So you see his art everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility because those artists are going to have rich patrons to, pay them.
Right.
So
there's Professor Bauer. How you doing, Professor Bauer?
I am doing outstanding. Good evening, all.
Good evening. We're not going to be around too long here.
No, I just all of a sudden I walked by and I heard something about some kind of fellatio or some kind of something going on somewhere, and I said,
"This is your noise on YouTube."
It's like, what's he talking about over there?
Better stop in and find out.
Yeah, we were just talking about a bunch of stuff from Pompeii tonight, but got into the frescoes, and there's more sexual frescoes than.
There are some non-sexual frescoes that I've just posted to your messenger.
There's a ton. I've got a ton of those non-sexual ones. That
who wants to look at those?
Who wants to look at those?
That's not good radio.
Yeah, some of these.
I mean, like these is like the equivalent of what we would do, like a painting of a modern of a bowl of fruit. I mean, it was just it's not stigmatized now as it was then.
Right.
So I mean, it's a slice of life.
What do you mean by that, Sarah? It's not. What was stigmatized more than now?
Sexuality.
You don't think sexuality is stigmatized now?
It's more now than that back then.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Back then, they were all about it.
Right. I mean, it's a completely different culture. And then, the Christians came and, did their thing. And, I mean, every culture oppresses another culture, tries to erase what was before. It said, oh, this is ours. We were here first.
Well, have you seen some of the stuff that is down in India? Some of the Hindu and the ancient temples? I mean,
I've seen pictures. Yeah. I mean,
they have, these are carved out reliefs that are just as Pompeian as Pompeian is.
Yeah. I mean, there's some cathedrals and churches, you believe it or not, they have the same stuff as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole tantric thing is, that's a whole, philosophy.
That's a whole discipline.
Right. And so, I think the Indians and the Chinese seem to be pretty adept at, reproductive thing.
Well, I mean, they all had their, their cultures and manuals. Like the Chinese had their own version of, or was it the Japanese who had pillow books, or and the the most famous book from India's
the Kama Sutra.
Sex is the Kama Sutra, right? Which it's supposed to be ways to elevate their spiritual self, not and rather than, oh, it's fun. That's good. That could be fun.
Well, I tell you what. When I engage in the pleasures of the opposite sex, and we are both enjoying it, there is a spiritual thing going on for me. I can tell you that. There's a lot of oh God going down.
Oh God, yeah.
Invoking the name Most High.
I have to say, personally, I have never attained a thing sexually where I go, this is like a religion. This is like spiritual for me.
You haven't?
No, I maybe have labeled it other things. Like this is ecstasy for me, maybe not spirituality. I don't think I've ever entered into it. And it's not that I'm ignorant of that stuff. It's or like I'm, some kind of mad cow or something. It's just that, it's not something that ever entered into it. It wasn't a spiritual thing. It was on a totally different level than spirituality. When it was, for lack of better words, good, amazing, wonderful, whatever you want to label it as, I never put that in the category of being spiritual.
Really, and it's the only time that man gets to be most godlike, to create life.
Well, if you think of it that way, yeah. I think of it as it's how man gets to be the most man-like. We get to. Does God have sex? I don't know. But do I think of sexual relation as, and now, honey, I'm looking so forward to this because this is going to be something that is like the creation of the world.
But there's nothing like having a bomb go off in the building right as you're climaxing.
What? To have what?
A bomb go off in the building. The night that they bombed the bar down in the Rossmore building, I was on the opposite corner just finishing when the entire building shook, and I'm like, well, that's never happened.
We're walking into the realm of TMI.
Was that good for you?
She was like, wow, that was amazing.
But seriously, in trying to have a serious discussion about it, I don't think I've heard the whole thing about, sex, really good sex is like a spiritual experience. And I've never, ever equated one. I've had really good sexual experiences, but I've never equated them
you need a redhead.
to spirituality because I put spirituality in a totally different camp. That's like saying, I do something that's natural between my wife or my kids and I, or whatever it might be, that there are natural things we engage in as people and families. And I don't go, opening those Christmas presents, or maybe a bad example because it's supposed to be spiritual in a sense, but I don't experience the spiritual out of that. I don't experience.
Well, I think that probably just gets down. That just gets down to the individual's definition of spirituality. Sure. Right now, like all kinds of terms, it's been used and abused to the point where it's got so many different meanings and uses that you got to qualify it every time you hear it so that you know which angle it's coming at you from. And you can kind of go, oh, okay, I see where you're going. Okay. Yeah. But, one of the things I was pondering the other day, I'm not sure why this came up.
Hang on to that thought,
dishes. I might have been doing the dishes or something, but it occurred to me that in the process and in the biological mechanism of the way reproduction happens, when, first of all, you got the whole issue of all these people doing this abortion stuff, and I'm going, well, if you know that there's a chance of that happening, maybe you should take that into consideration and do things to mitigate so that you don't end up in that situation. But that's another rabbit in another hole. So I was thinking about this whole reproduction thing, and I thought, the only thing that has to happen during sex, because there's sex, there's love sex, there's intimacy and being with someone in that physical way, that has nothing to do at the 90% of the time with procreation. It is something that is voluntarily engaged in, that you kind of go, well,
rarely have I ever entered a sexual relationship with somebody, the act of sex, thinking this could be the beginning of a new life. Let's go make a new life.
Yeah,
I never. As a matter of fact.
99.9% of the time.
99.9%
and that's
of the time, you
probably,
didn't even think about that.
I'm probably exaggerating, but nonetheless, my point is that sex is a physical, conscious, mental, all of the three main components that make up what we are and how we function, and all the way down to our energy signature, what you can call a soul or spirit or whatever you want to call it. You have an energy signature, and that has resonances. And when that resonance hits with somebody of the opposite sex, and or whatever sex it is you prefer, but I I prefer the opposite sex. And when you have that resonance, it can be so magical that you can define a whole bunch of different adjectives to it. But the thing that crossed my mind was, in the act of reproduction, there's only one of the two that needs to have an orgasm, and that's the man.
Yep.
If the man doesn't orgasm,
procreate, yeah,
then that procreation process doesn't start. I mean,
Right.
can you, and women, I'm going to probably piss some people off here, but I'm just going to say it.
cares?
I mean, the stereotype of women is that, they always fake orgasms or whatever. But if you think about it, if you look at it just from the mechanistic perspective, it's a good thing women don't have to have an orgasm to get pregnant.
Yeah.
There'd be like 11 people on the planet.
Exactly. So
and that's a joke. That's a joke. But anyway.
The joke,
Sarah, you had a thought that you want.
These are the jokes. So anyway, Sarah, back to
Sorry
you.
about that.
You were starting something.
No, so I was gonna say that, I mean, it would probably be like a pretty good show topic, because there's a whole area of religious ecstasy. You see, what was that? What was that? That sculpture, was it the Ecstasy of Saint Teresa? And religious ecstasy, when you have like religious fervor, and here we have like Baptist revivals, or people who become entering into different alternative states of mind, or speaking in tongues, or there's a strong link between ecstasy and religion. I mean, if you consider the type of even in Rome, cardinals and popes, they commission all these artists to do these old types of work. It's not like they're all buttoned up. They've commissioned statues and paintings and all that, and it's not like everybody's dressed like nuns. So I mean, they saw particularly something, whether it's personal hedonistic enjoyment or whatever. But there's definitely a link between the ecstatic state of mind and its connection between the physical and the spiritual. Where that's about it.
I get that. And I have to say, there are very few things in life that I have experienced other than what you might categorize as the spiritual or religious itself that equate to a spiritual experience for me. I can say that was one of the most amazing things that ever happened to me. That was soul stirring. It was this and that. I don't equate that to spirituality. Maybe it's my own semantics, but
what about that time you were in Egypt and you said you felt like you were, I know you were excited about, you were excited everywhere, but I mean, you said that at one point you felt like you were looking into a time in the past where you
I equate that to an actual spiritual experience.
Right.
I equated that to a vision.
Right.
Which I don't have to say. That vision was so good, it was like a spiritual experience. I would say that vision was a spiritual experience.
Right.
Sex, I've had really good sex. I've had really bad sex, and I'm not saying that for effect. You can be comic about anything, but there, even the really, really good, blow your mind, no pun intended, explosive sex has never equated to me to be a spiritual thing, because I see them as different things, I guess. I don't know. But and I only bring any of that up because I know that there are those that say sex, it can be a spiritual experience, and I'm like, I don't know. I'd like to experience that one time. I've had awesome sex, but not spiritual.
Yeah.
So
well, the bar has been set. So
the bar's been set. Yes.
okay.
The challenge is there. Rainy? Oh, she's out of the room. Oh well.
So, but yeah, there's a definitely different, not ideas, but I mean different perceptions of culture. We move, we kind of vibrate between hedonism and something else, back and forth. I think nowadays the way our culture is going, we're kind of going back to that, hedonistic. Gimme, I want now instant gratification type of culture than was previously had before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean everything is so in the palm of your hand, pun intended.
Everything's in an entendre, so
right.
But seriously, I mean, you think about it, you can watch and have access and see whatever the hell you want with the device that you hold in your hand all day. And that's a tsunami of information, and a lot of it carefully crafted and curated to cause a reaction, an emotional state that you get from the imagery that you either see and or hear. Mm-hmm. And that causes an overload. I mean, it's like this whole student loan thing, and I'm not going to talk politics, so I'm just going to use the metrics.
I almost brought that up at the beginning of the show, but I didn't want to.
I'm just going to talk about the metrics, okay? And just tell me what's wrong with this picture. So you have these massive accredited, state-sanctioned, legal, official, all that, institutions of, let's call it education, okay? And so what they do is they create a product that they then sell to people who have to take money out to buy that product, just like a car or a house or whatever. So the product they're selling them is some kind of stamped piece of paper with some words on it that has potentially some kind of meaning that somebody at somewhere either didn't ask, or if they did ask the question, what's this worth on the other side? In other words, when I have this paper, what kind of income can I expect? Because that's the metrics, right? That's the bottom line of the way you look at these things. So apparently these institutions have made products that have not turned out well. And it could be it could be the people for sure. But on whole, the institutions, these buildings with people that have all this not only bureaucracy, but a whole bunch of just, contempt for anything that is against what they say, right? You can't challenge these institutions, and because they are the institutions, they are officialdom, right? So they create a product, and these people buy a product that isn't worth the value that they were sold it as. And then as time, and this has been repeated you got a track record of at least 10 or 20 years of this continual event of where money's being put in and the return isn't shit. And it's saddled people and it's caused a lot of problems and all of that. Well, if that was a business, it would have gone out of business. But not only is it not out of business, did you know that education institutions like Harvard and Yale and all that, they are tax exempt? They do not pay taxes.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I didn't either.
Yeah, I knew that.
And they have billions in their coffers.
Right.
Yale or Harvard's got 40 billion. Stanford's got 25 billion.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just looking at this I'm not taking any sides. I'm just looking at the metrics and how this performance for this investment that people were, in my opinion, as my hyperbole, but I think a lot of it was conned. Young people can't make informed decisions on shit like this unless they have help. And if they did have help, apparently the help was shit too. Because when they went into these commitments to achieve this knowledge domain that would give them the accreditation of a named institution, It didn't work out. So I think this whole thing is, when you look at just the numbers and then throwing 300 billion at it, whatever the number ends up being, which I don't think is going to happen. I think it'll end up being canceled or corrected or something. But the institutional side, the product provider, the creator, the company, if this was Apple wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
Yep.
And
Very true.
It's
So-
like putting a transfusion into a patient who's bleeding out, because just going from my experience.
You think you should stitch those up first?
What?
You think you should stitch up the wounds first before you pump new blood in?
Right?
That might you would
Oh,
think.
no, let's open the gash instead.
Pretty much.
But at least with my experience in college, when I hate to say it if somebody from my school hears or whatever, but I mean, to me it was more like indoctrination. I mean, the way the system is set up, it does nothing to encourage creative
Sadly
thinking.
so.
Yeah.
I
So
just
if you
wanna-
look at all these super billionaires and everything. They've done these creative types, whether it's Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or whoever.
Scott Roberts.
Yeah,
all
these super billionaires.
Or Michelle Canham Free with naughty talk.
Right. They
I was
all
attempting to educate.
stepped away from higher education, and they ended up fine. They
Yeah.
had enough of that innate cleverness or whatever you want to call it, that innate
There's
sense.
an easy way for the government to fix this going forward. It doesn't fix the people that are behind, but going forward, they could easily say, if you want to go to school at your state school, it's free. If you want to go to school at somebody else's state school or at a private school, then you're going to have to pay for it.
Right, because I mean,
So-
it's the same thing with high school. Because now to get a job nowadays, a basic bachelor's of is basically equivalent to what high school was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I mean,
But you know what? In all my years, I've never had anyone say, well, can I see your transcripts, or can I see your
Right.
degree, or can I see it? None of that. Even when I was teaching, they didn't ask for that.
Well, and that's an excellent point, Dave, that I'd like to elaborate on just a little bit more, if I may. I think what we're seeing, as I'd mentioned that one of the last shows I did for the Nexus before I put into hiatus was the knowledge apocalypse, the end of the curated narrative. And the whole idea there is, it seemed to me that at a minimum, there's so much information that's available now to independent thinkers. You don't have to be scholared, papered, plaqued, or anything else. You can learn as much as people who have those on your own, in front of your computer, a lot of it on YouTube. YouTube is an amazing resource for an incredible amount of excellent information. But nonetheless, MIT's got their entire curriculum up online for free anyway. So if you want to go learn something, all you're going to do is do the same thing that the people who have a stamped paper, except you won't go through the mangled up system that it is. So my point is this. I think education, we've already seen it in health with telemedicine, where they finally said, yep, you can doctor where, if you can get online with somebody, and you got a degree, you can doctor. Great move, head in the right direction. I think what's going to happen in education, and we're already seeing it in the freelance world, at least in what I see, because I'm in that world. There's a growing set of collectives, and I think I'd mentioned this before, self-organizing collectives are what we're going to see going forward. But there's places like Skillshare, which is one of the many websites out there, where you can go on there and you can say, this is what I know, I can teach this, and here's some samples. And people will eat that shit up. Not only will they eat that shit up, but what's going to happen, I think, in education, the whole structure that we have now, the institutional model of all this academia and these colleges and universities and so forth, are going to have to redefine themselves to provide and compete in the market of independent creators, independent thinkers, independent people who have gained knowledge about things that and what's cool about it, especially the unpapered ones, is that most of them have got their experience through doing the work. They've actually achieved and done things of note that is definable, repeatable, defendable, and presentable. And what will happen is people will start creating courses on certain subjects, and they'll put them on different platforms.
That's already happening. Like with Courses Plus and all that stuff.
It is happening.
Would you say it's the rise of the modern apprenticeship? I mean, it's.
I think you could definitely use that. It's internship, it's mentorship with based on meritocracy. Meritocracy.
Yeah, I got you.
Meritocracy.
Thank you. Model, because meritocracy is what's missing. Being of merit, meaning that you have credibility, you have enough validated content of self that people go, yeah, that person is who they say they are, and their stuff is X, Y, and Z. But yes, you're going to see the entire educational model switch to more of a market-based, where people who have the skills and the knowledge and can put, like Khan Academy on YouTube is phenomenal. If you haven't seen that, highly recommended. But there's a lot of those, and that model is what's going to enable people to do independent, essentially another subject that I've harped on, the whole barter model. When you have something that you want to exchange with someone, you want to do that as direct as possible. That's the history in our culture, at least from what we know of the way civilizations worked. And then the whole concept of a currency, so that you can just buy without, before that it was Scotty had some pigs, I had some chickens, and we said, okay, I want chickens, you want pigs, here we go. We make that exchange, and it's between the two of us. And there's nobody else involved. We make that agreement. The value on both sides is clear to the individual and to each other, right? And that's how fair trade
to this day,
right? And exactly. So this is where the technology, as long as it doesn't get screwed with, which has all the chances to do that, but I think it's going to prevail. This whole technology of blockchain, which is the architecture that makes cryptos work. Okay, so the digital crypto thing is just something that sits on top of an infrastructure that will change everything. Because once you have an identity on a blockchain, you have immutability, you have sovereignty, you own that because it's been replicated across millions of other computers. Well, if I wanted to buy some art from Scotty, and I just wanted to buy it from him, I agree to the value, I pay for it, and he's got it, and it's there, and there's no institutions, there's no other framework, there's no other architecture in the way of that transaction. The architecture that's there is there to simply facilitate it with the least amount of friction as possible. So I wrapped a lot of stuff in there, but my point is that this whole change of knowledge in the way that people view it, the way they create it, the way that they present it, the way that they sell it, knowledge, skills, talents, are all going to be, they're heading into the peer-to-peer thing. And that's where the massive change will happen. The people with the best stuff will go to, more people will go to their stuff for whatever reason, whatever interest, whatever value they put out there. And those are the ones that are going to rise to the top. And they're going to, it's kind of like, think of, how Rogan has changed podcasting. I mean, he went in there and he was doing his thing, and then he just hit it out of the park, and he can go where he can put his content wherever he wants.
Yep.
And he knows there's going to be a boatload of people that are going to, that changed media content from the standpoint of the way that it has been typically looked at, as far as interviews. I've pulled up some old interviews that came across my feed. There's a great channel on YouTube called Periscope Films, and they put out all these old 1947 Navy ship war preparations, put out by the military, and they're like 15 minutes long, and you go, wow, look at that. Great commercials, the old stuff. But when you see that, and we came from that to where we are now, you can see that all of the infrastructure and the architecture in systems, economics, social structure, the way all of that has transitioned has outgrown the system it came from. And that system can't handle this new paradigm of the way that we are evolving through this awakening, new knowledge, new analysis, new information. And we're all looking at it going, wow, it's going to get ugly for a little bit. But if we can get through that, the capabilities and the ability to interact, and this is one of the silver linings of the whole lockdown, in my opinion. Everybody had to get online. You had to get on a video thing. You had to get
right.
And that is where the future is going to be more and more of, because the interconnectivity, the individual, the ability to transact one-to-one, peer-to-peer. Okay. That's what this blockchain model does. And then as I said, the cryptos sit on top of that. That's how they even work, is because of the blockchain. Well, the blockchain can be used in anything. It's going to completely transform the entire business systems applications design. I know because I'm working on it. But this whole model is going to change the ability to do more individual interaction around the world.
Well, and it's also going to make it harder for criminals to come in and hold ransom companies and things like that.
Sure.
Because I think
the blockchain, yes.
I mean, essentially, you're cutting out the middleman in the acquisition of knowledge. The only thing that I question it with that is that, okay, you go look at it, say you want to learn something, you go to a YouTube video, and then what? Because there's a lot of, you have to be able to predict of, okay, where do I go next after this? Okay, where do you think? Because often in subjects, like, say, if I wanted to learn painting from Scotty, I go to Scotty and he shows me how to, draw a cat or whatever, or a stick figure. And then, that's a big difference than, looking at the mosaics and murals that we were looking at earlier.
Yeah.
You have to learn about how muscles work, physicality of the body, light, how light interacts with objects, depth perception, all this other stuff. And how would I know to learn how to do that, without
have you seen, Sarah, have you seen Microsoft's, have you seen Microsoft's HoloLens?
No.
Oh, again, go just do a search on YouTube. So what they've got is, and they've had it for a few years. In fact, it started with the Surface about 10 years ago, which was originally about a carom-sized table or even bigger flat computer. But the HoloLens, they've got it all set up now for to teach medicine and do actual work.
The virtual cadavers. You're talking
right, the 3D, right, yeah. And they separate all of the systems. You can spin them around, you can touch them, you can move them. I mean, that to me is that's phenomenal. I mean, every time I watch Iron Man, especially the second one, when Tony gets down there and he's got that big room and he just throws up the building layout from his dad for the city of the future. I mean, I see that and I look at it and go, I want one of those. I mean, that is just, it's like the
deck. I'm going to take you back a few statements. I'm going to take you back a few statements because you both said things that blew my mind a little bit. So I spent a great deal of my life in the 17th century. And Martin Luther changed the world when he said to the people, you don't have to go to a priest to talk to God.
Right.
Okay. And what you're saying and what you both are saying is what we're creating here, in the same way that the world was taken away from the Vatican in the 1500s, we are taking things back from science and knowledge and saying you don't have to go to these handful of universities around the world to learn things. You can get that knowledge direct.
21st century Renaissance.
And that is going to revolutionize the world again in the same way it revolutionized the world when religion no longer was held by the priests and the Vatican, and became something that every man could be in their home and read their damn Bible and connect with God individually without having to go to somebody else and have them told what to think and what to pray and what to believe.
Exactly.
Well, I think you've hit on something that's pretty intrinsic there, because I have, as I've mentioned here before, I have experienced just the opposite of that. It's the not having the, how would you put it, having the, to go with your illustration, your metaphor there, not having the ability to pray to God on my own. I had to go through someone else. Is the same type of thing I experienced with the scientific community or the credentialed community that said you must be credentialed to write about these things.
Yeah, but that's the way the Vatican was. If
bullshit.
you don't do, but at the time, the Vatican was hammering down, if you don't do exactly as we say.
Yeah, hell, even Newton had to keep all of his alchemical stuff.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Because, you couldn't let them know about it. But
we're at that
exactly.
same
I like your metaphor. The analogy.
We're at exactly that same threshold as Newton and all those people were at that point.
That's my point.
And I completely agree. In fact, to me, what we're in right now is a 21st century Renaissance.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I mean, to continue, the analogy, it wasn't just for Catholics, it wasn't just going to church. They had things like, you can sin, but you have to do, so many Hail Marys. There's plenary indulgences.
Yeah,
you got to do half of the choir.
Martin Luther got fed up. He nailed his 95 Theses to the door and said, "Hey, you don't need all this." And I mean, it wasn't just a matter of spirituality, because that was upsetting, the entire apple cart, because that was the whole entire power structure, the monetary structure. That was the equivalent of taking down the state.
Well, and again, I go back to, and I've argued this many times, the Vatican was the Holy Rome that was Rome in its current incarnation. When the Roman Empire fell, it didn't really fall, it changed.
Right.
And that's what the Vatican was. It maintained the Roman borders.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And again, this was Rome falling again when Martin Luther said, screw that, we're going a different path, and we're in essence are doing it again.
Yeah.
In our life.
That's my thought. And I think that really it's one of the most, this proverb is ascribed to ancient Chinese, but I think it goes back and has alliterations in other languages and cultures, but it's, may you live in interesting times.
Yeah.
This is
interesting times.
Without a doubt. Well, it's unprecedented in at least the histories that we know. And it's, history rhymes more than it repeats, but sometimes the cycles have very common characteristics. And we're seeing that if all you got to do is look around you, and the real challenge, and I've harped on this, the real challenge is you got to sharpen up, you got to check your frames and your filters, and you got to sharpen up and essentially put a field around you to where the bullshit is automatically repelled and you don't get caught up in it. Or if you get an incoming and you get a swipe and drive by, you go, well, okay, I know what that is. I'm going to go back to what I was doing, because the distraction is the key component to easily controlling the emotional fields and the way that people see and think and talk about and interact with things.
Well, and if you're smart, you'll take a sword class or two.
Exactly. You have to. I mean,
I'm ready for some boring times.
Yeah, it would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be nice. Little peace and quiet would be nice. So
I want an impresario. I just want to paint. Just somebody pay me so I can paint.
If I didn't have to worry about paying bills, and what I mean by worrying about it, I didn't have to worry about it always being over your head. Didn't have to worry about paying bills. Didn't have to worry about government. Didn't have to worry about all the things, the way things were, just sit back. If I had my druthers, as they used to say, if you know the source of that, you get a big gold star. If I had my druthers, I would sit and write and paint. That's all I do.
Same here.
I wouldn't worry about nothing else. And what was the song by Leonard Nimoy was in the video?
Oh, that Hobbit song.
Mars. No, it was
Life
Bruno Mars. Sometimes I just I don't feel like doing anything. Dun, dun, dun,
Oh, okay, yeah.
Whatever that one is. And Leonard Nimoy was in that. Just playing himself, getting up in his little house in L.A. and walking around in his underwear, his boxers, and going to the store in his boxers and his robe, and stuff like that. But that would be nice to finally have a time where you can say, I want some peace. I want some quiet. I don't want to worry about shit anymore. It's Yeats said it, not to go all sing-songy on it, but Yeats said it in the Lake Isle of Innisfree. He says, I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, in a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, and a hive for the honeybee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping on the veils of evening to where the linnet sings. And he goes through this whole thing of hearing it in the deep heart's core. This is what he's after. And maybe that's not the point exactly that you were making, but that's the point that I go with. Maybe that's a spiritual experience for me. That point of saying, I want to just stop things for a while. I wish things would just slow down and stop. I wish all the bullshit would stop for a while. And just years of, you hear all these things and you read about all these things in history of, and his father fought 7 wars, and his grandfather 5 wars before him, and his great grandfather took us through 13 battles and wars, and his was finally a reign of peace, where for 30 to 40 years it was peace. And you think, now people paid the price for that peace, but wouldn't it be nice, all of us, to say we're entering a phase where we can finally go, it's quiet, it's peaceful, it's boring for a while, like Sarah said. It'd be nice to be boring for a while.
That revitalization is important.
Yeah, it is.
Especially because we've been through a lot, especially in the past centuries. So even the past 5 to 10 years. It's been,
exactly.
A lot. I mean,
and what brings that to an end? Catastrophe? Is catastrophe what brings that to an end? Is it ingenuity that brings it to an end? Is it willful, forcible, you are the Judas Maccabeus that brings the peace? And it's those who live after you have the peace.
I mean, it's forcible destruction. It's because everything is so complicated.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to take a lot, and just,
I'm tired of complicated.
Yeah, really everybody's tired of complicated. So
tired of having to think.
Cut out the middleman, and you go, if you want something, you just go and get it. It's like, if you sublimate, the hunter-gatherer experience, hunter-gatherers, that got sublimated into shopping. Shopping got sublimated into Amazon. You just go and
wouldn't it be? I get this when I watch these archaeological shows that Dave and I have talked about. You watch this and you see, what was man doing? Why did they ask questions like, we don't want to know so much about this. We want to know why, what brought them? Why were they here? Why were they on this hillside? Why did they make their settlement here? What drew them here? And you think back to a time where they would get up in the morning and they would look out and they would see the hills over there, and they would see the trees, and there was the river.
And what it really came down to, the 4 guys were walking along, and they go, I'm not walking any further. I'm tired. Let's build a fucking village here. I'm
build
done
a village right here, this spot. And they get up, and what do they have to worry about? Do they have to worry about You think about Native American culture. They worried about other tribes and stuff, but they didn't have a big existential worry until all of a sudden they were fighting with a force from the east. And this was the biggest thing they'd ever had to encounter. And it wiped out their system. And so, but all the way back to, is there ever really a time in our history where you can look back and say, this was the time of peace?
This was the time where there was
no bullshit. And whenever there was peace, then somebody came up and said, I'm now going to institute prima nocta. You're like, what the fuck is your problem? We were having peace here. So I don't know. So I got nowhere I'm going with that.
I mean,
the end of the show. So
yeah, I mean, we didn't have to worry about traffic, and everybody had
right.
They were kind of like isolated in their own space. You didn't have to go far.
Yeah.
For the people of Pompeii, their world pretty much was their city.
Yeah.
Most of them didn't get to go out and travel to other places like Florence or everywhere else. That was just
Naples across the bay.
Throughout history, there's a number of studies have been done. It seems like most people didn't, in their communities and where they live, they never ventured more than 5 miles from where they lived.
Yeah. They had everything they needed. I mean, I know people in my town who have never seen the ocean in person. So,
there you go. How far is the ocean from you?
Oh, several hours.
Okay. I thought you meant to say
I'm landlocked.
And we live in an ocean town.
Right.
I've been all over, and I'm living less than a mile probably from the house I grew up in.
There you go.
Talk about real-time data.
I keep coming back to the Minneapolis area and this region through my whole life, through all the places I've lived. And so anyway, let's wrap this for tonight because it's 11 o'clock. It's 11:01 Central Time, midnight 01 Eastern. And there's a lot to talk about. And I think this is really the bedrock of more things like this to talk about, to continue on with this. So I might continue on with Pompeii tomorrow night because there's some things I wanted to talk about that I didn't even get to. So interesting finds and discoveries and weird things.
If you got more pictures, I'll be by.
I got more pictures. I have pictures just for you.
I mean, overall, there are a lot of places all over the world that have similar stories or similar aspects. Like you were talking about Krakow and Auschwitz, or if you think of I know you said you weren't going to talk paranormal, but you did quite a bit today. About the aspect of it. I mean, there's places like even in the US. I mean, places like Tombstone. Where you have similar stories. So that girl of saying, "Oh, I took a rock from a place or from a cemetery," or
right.
That they have whatever happens to them, and they believe that it was due to that, and they put it back to the mail, and to send it.
Here you go. I'm going to send this to Pompeii, Italy.
You'll know what to do with it.
You'll know what to do with it when it gets there.
Makes you feel bad for the mailman who's carrying that. Yeah. I mean, he's carrying.
Hey, what you got for my mail? More rock.
Want a big happy.
It's like the Charlie Brown Halloween. It's like it's a rock.
There it is. All right, guys, let's get out of here. We'll talk tomorrow night.
Okay.
Sarah, have a good night.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks.
Give the kids a hug for me.
Dave, Professor, we'll see you both. All right, guys, that's it. We're done. And I want to thank you for being here, being part of this. And we'll see you again tomorrow night. And in the meantime, live long and prosper.